There are phases in life when you feel like you're climbing a mountain covered in fog. No one beside you, no one cheering, no one watching. You keep walking, keep trying, keep honoring your promise to yourself. Yet the world outside seems hauntingly silent. No one says, "I'm proud of you." No one sees the silent battles you fought. And sometimes you ask yourself, is it worth it when no one witnesses it? But it's precisely in that solitude where another kind of strength begins to form, a strength that doesn't need praise or validation. Carl Jung once said that every rebirth begins with dissolution. When there's no one left to lean on, it's not the end. It's a sign that your soul is preparing to enter a new stage where you become your own source of power. In today's video, we will walk through that journey, the 7 steps to rise even when no one is by your side. It's in the moment you stop waiting for someone to lift you up that you discover a profound truth. Everything you've ever sought in the outer world, strength, love, peace, has always been within you, waiting to be awakened. And when that happens, you don't just rise, you begin to walk with your own light. Loneliness, the silent teacher of strength. Number 1. Loneliness, the silent teacher of strength. There are moments in life when the world seems to pull away. Familiar conversations no longer excite you. People who once walked with you begin to feel distant. Everything on the surface stays the same. Your job, your relationships. Yet inside you know something is changing. No one tells you this is the beginning of growth because most people are afraid of this stage. But for Carl Jung, this is the first sign of the night sea journey, the dark night of the soul. When you no longer resonate with the old world, and to step into the new, you must pass through your deepest shadow, loneliness. The loneliness Jung spoke of is not about being physically alone in an empty room. It's the feeling of being disconnected from everything that once made you feel you belonged. You still smile, still talk, but deep down you know what's happening around you no longer touches your soul. The world seems to speak a language you no longer understand, and you're left with only yourself. Many believe that reaching this point means failure. But in truth, it's the moment your soul begins to separate from the persona, the mask that once helped you fit in. The feeling that no one understands me isn't a sign you've lost your way. It's proof that you're getting closer to your true self. Jung believed that a person only truly matures when they dare to face themselves in solitude. Not when someone listens, but when every external sound goes silent and you're forced to hear your inner voice. During this stage, many lose direction and run away into work, relationships, distractions that help them forget the emptiness. But the more they avoid it, the larger that emptiness grows. Loneliness doesn't come to punish you. It comes to deepen you, to help you rebuild your foundation from within. I once knew a woman who, after her divorce, fell into a state of disorientation. She had always been surrounded by friends and laughter. But when everything collapsed, her apartment became frighteningly quiet. Instead of filling the void with dates or work, she learned to sit in silence. At first just for a few minutes, then gradually for hours. She cooked for herself, read, journaled, and faced the questions she had always avoided. Months later, she said, "I realize silence is no longer my enemy. It's where I finally hear myself." That was what Jung called the meeting with the self, the moment you stop running and start coming home. When there's no one to depend on, that pressure forces you to develop discipline and inner steadiness. Like a climber without a safety rope, every step becomes a conscious choice, every action a promise to yourself, and each promise kept becomes a brick that builds your strength. Loneliness doesn't come to make you weak. It comes to make you unshakable. It's the gym of the soul where your essence is forged into steel. Looking back, you'll see that those quiet months were when you were strongest. The image of an oak tree in winter always reminds me of that. When every other tree sheds its leaves, the oak stands alone in the cold wind. No flowers, no color. But during that winter, its roots are growing deeper, preparing for spring. Humans are the same. Every lonely season is the soul's winter. But if you're patient enough to stay, you will see that spring is waiting behind it. Jung once said, "In all chaos there is a cosmos. In all disorder, a secret order." If you're standing in the darkness of loneliness, don't be afraid. It's not a sign of weakness. It's proof that you're leaving the old path to open a new one. Because the soul, to be reborn, must first dissolve. And only when the world is silent can you hear the voice within whisper, "It's time to rise." Remember, no one is coming to lift you up. But that's not bad news, because in that very moment, true strength is born. No one can give you resilience, but loneliness will teach you how to forge it. Every time you make it through a long night, You're not just overcoming fear, you're rewriting your story. Stop seeking emotional comfort from others. Number 2, stop seeking emotional comfort from others. At some point after learning to stand in solitude, you realize something profound. What exhausts us isn't loneliness, it's expecting someone else to fill it. Carl Jung once said, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that matter most." When you rely on others to make you feel okay, every silence, withdrawal, or unmet response feels like collapse. That isn't love. It's emotional dependency, which Jung saw as the mark of an unintegrated ego. After the stage of the lonely warrior, the next lesson is to learn how to soothe yourself. When you stop seeking reassurance and approval from the outside, that's when the self begins to take over. I once met a woman in a group therapy session. She confessed that she nearly panicked whenever her boyfriend didn't reply to her texts. She would check her phone dozens of times, imagining the worst. "I know it's irrational," she said, "but when he's silent, I feel like I don't exist." After months of therapy, she discovered the fear didn't come from him. It came from her childhood. Whenever she was sad, her parents would say, "Don't be dramatic," or walk away. Her unconscious learned, "Your feelings don't matter." And ever since, she sought someone to prove otherwise. Jung called that the trap of emotional projection, when we use others as mirrors to determine our worth. When they respond, we feel valuable. When they withdraw, we lose direction. But the truth is, no one can be your savior forever. The more you depend on others for stability, the more you lose the ability to regulate yourself. Self-soothing doesn't mean coldness or disconnection. It means becoming the one who listens to your own emotions. When sadness arises, instead of running to find someone to calm it, you stay, place your hand on your heart, and whisper, "I'm still here." That simple act is the beginning of emotional independence, a key stage of individuation. When you stop merging with the collective and become an autonomous self. A person who knows how to comfort themselves doesn't need constant responses to feel valuable. They don't need instant replies or compliments to keep going. They can sit quietly in a cafe enjoying their coffee alone, feeling complete in that moment. That's not coldness. It's the highest form of freedom, freedom from the need to be validated. Jung said that all forms of dependence are the shadow of love. We call it attachment, but it's really fear of abandonment. The immature ego craves someone to confirm its worthiness. But when you look deeply into that fear, you realize it's not emptiness. It's an invitation. An invitation to become the parent you once needed but never had. And then you understand what you thought you needed someone else to help you survive. You've had the power to do all along. In modern psychology, this is called emotional independence. It's not rejecting love or connection. It's refusing to hand over control of your emotions to anyone else. You still love, still connect, but you don't lose yourself when relationships change. When someone leaves, you grieve, but you don't collapse. When someone goes silent, you listen, but you don't lose your worth. Someone with emotional independence doesn't need a rescuer. They can lift themselves up, wipe their own tears, and keep walking. And only from that place can they love truly, not out of need, but out of choice. Perhaps that's what Jung meant when he said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Because when you stop seeking comfort from others, you start seeing your own power, a power that doesn't depend, doesn't borrow, and can't be taken away. From the moment you stop waiting for someone else to make you happy, you begin to grow up. And if you're in that stage, no one understands, no one comforts, no one lifts you up. Remember, it's okay. No one coming doesn't mean you're alone. It only means it's time to stand on your own 2 feet. Whisper quietly to yourself, "I don't need anyone to save me. I just need to not abandon myself." That's the second step and the turning point to rising, even when no one is there. And if you're in that stage now, learning to stand alone with no one understanding or comforting you, see it as a sign that your soul is maturing. Let me know you're still here by leaving one word in the comments. Still, as a signal that even when no one stands beside you, you still choose to stand with yourself. Stop complaining. The language of the victim. Ego number 3. Stop complaining. The language of the victim ego. After you've learned to stand strong in solitude and soothe yourself, another subtle but demanding challenge arises. Stop complaining. Complaining is how the ego keeps you anchored in your comfort zone, the place where you get to see yourself as the victim. It convinces you that you have a reason not to change. But the irony is this: every time you complain, You reinforce the belief that you are powerless, unconsciously sending the message, "I have no strength." Carl Jung called this the shadow of self-pity. When you're trapped in that darkness, you stop acting and start repeating the same question, "Why me?" As if the universe is unfair, as if the world owes you an explanation. But the real question isn't "why me?" It's "what can I do with this?" The moment you change that question, the energy trapped in complaint begins to move again. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Every time you complain, your unconscious is running the show, turning you into a victim of circumstance. But when you look beneath the emotion that fuels your complaint, you step out of the shadow and become the one steering consciousness again. Complaining is a clever habit of the mind. It makes you feel like you're doing something, but in reality, you're staying still. Each complaint is a form of delayed action. When you're busy blaming circumstances, you lose the energy to transform them. Others may hurt you, but only you can decide whether that hurt becomes a chain or a lesson. Think of a stone at the bottom of a river. The current is strong. It grinds, it crashes. It carries the stone away. But over time, the very flow that seemed destructive polishes the stone until it becomes smooth and luminous. Life is the same. It doesn't pause because you complain. It keeps flowing, keeps testing, keeps shaping you. But if you endure the flow instead of cursing it, you'll become stronger, clearer, more beautiful than before. Complaining feeds the victim ego, the part of you that always wants someone else to take responsibility for your pain. That ego loves to feel pitied because as long as you're a victim, you're exempt from responsibility. But that's also the surest way to stay stuck. On the other hand, every time you stop complaining and take action, no matter how small, you reclaim the energy lost to your unconscious. You rise not because someone pushes you, but because you choose not to stay in the dark any longer. Complaining often starts with small sentences. "I'm so tired. No one understands me. I try so hard, but no one notices." Those phrases seem harmless, but they quietly feed an ego that believes happiness depends on others. Truly strong people don't need the world to comfort them. They can look directly at their pain, acknowledge it, and ask, "Now, what can I do?" A viewer once shared with me that after her friends betrayed her, she spent 6 months consumed by bitterness. "I told anyone who would listen how awful they were," she said. But she realized she was telling the same story for half a year. That night, she wrote in her journal, "If no one was around to hear me complain, would I still tell this story?" The answer was no. The next day, she started writing about what she wanted to learn, to change, to create. "It wasn't them leaving that hurt me," she said. "It was that I held on to the story for too long." Stopping complaint doesn't mean denying pain. It means no longer living in it. You can still feel sadness, disappointment, grief. But instead of retelling the wound, you use that energy to build something new. Each action, no matter how small, is a declaration to the universe. I am no longer a victim of this. Carl Jung once said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." And that choice, to stop complaining and start acting, is the doorway to a new level of strength. Every time you stop saying, "Why me?" and start asking, "What can I do with this?" you take another step forward. Because ultimately that's how you rise even when no one is there. Not through pity, but through the quiet strength of taking responsibility for your own becoming. And then you'll realize you were never truly alone. You were just too busy complaining to hear your own soul calling. Become your own source of validation. Number 4, become your own source of validation. After you've stopped complaining and begun to act, a deeper test appears, the silence of being unseen. You stand up. You work hard. You give your best. Yet no one praises you. No one acknowledges you. No one seems to notice. This is the point where most people give up, not because they fear hardship, but because they fear invisibility. But it's precisely at this moment of no recognition that the universe tests whether you can keep going without the spotlight. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Because when you truly validate yourself, you no longer hide behind others' opinions. You don't need compliments. You don't need proof. You don't need witnesses to your worth because you've become your own witness." I'm reminded of Cassandra in Greek mythology, the woman gifted by Apollo with the power of prophecy, but cursed so that no one would believe her. She saw the truth, saw disasters before they came, but everyone turned away, calling her mad. Yet even in isolation, Cassandra did not go silent. She kept speaking, stayed loyal to what she saw, even when no one listened. At a deeper level, her story is a metaphor for every strong soul, those who continue to honor their truth in silence even when the world refuses to see them. Sometimes being believed isn't as important as staying true to yourself. Likewise, in modern life, many give their all only to be met with silence. I once spoke with a woman who, after years of dedication, was often the last one in her office at night. Yet when awards came, her boss praised someone else. "I felt invisible," she said. One day she decided to stop working to be seen and start working to see herself. Every time she finished a project, she wrote down what she'd done well, rewarded herself with a quiet afternoon, a coffee, a book. I realized external validation lasts for minutes, but self-recognition stays for days. That's the shift from the dependent ego to the self, the mature center of consciousness. In Jungian psychology, those who live from the self act not for praise, but because it's an expression of who they are. They don't need an audience to know their worth, because their value doesn't come from applause. It comes from the frequency of inner truth. External validation, in the end, is just a reflection. Those who haven't seen their own light will always chase it in others' eyes. But those who've seen it within carry it wherever they go. They no longer need others to believe because their belief has become their foundation. Jung once said, "Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darknesses of other people." When you dare to look inside, to see both your weakness and your strength, you no longer need the world to prove anything to you. You're no longer controlled by the fear of not enough, because now you are enough simply because you know it. Self-validation isn't arrogance. It's the deepest form of self-respect. It's knowing you're still on your way, still imperfect. Yet you hold yourself with both hands, light and shadow alike. Those who can validate themselves don't deny their flaws. They see them as proof of becoming. Mistakes don't reduce their worth. They make their path more real. Think of how steel is forged. Metal hardens only when exposed to fire. The same goes for the soul. Silence, neglect, and lack of recognition are the flames that strengthen your core. When no one else validates you, you're forced to look inward. And in that gaze, you discover something extraordinary. You're far stronger than you thought. And when you truly embrace that, something miraculous happens. You begin to glow from within. Others may not say a word, but they feel your presence, steady, calm, grounded. Not because you try to shine, but because you no longer need to prove. Remember, every applause fades, every gaze eventually turns away. But your own gaze, if it's warm and honest, becomes a flame that never dies. And that is the secret of those who rise even when no one stands beside them. If you feel the power of self-validation, of no longer seeking the world's eyes but seeing yourself clearly, hit like on this video. That will be your signal to the universe. I'm ready to be my own source of light. Rise quickly. Turn failure into fire. Number 5. Rise quickly. Turn failure into fire. Have you ever wondered why, even after becoming stronger and calmer, life still makes you fall, especially when no one is there to lift you up? Failure in its truest sense isn't about loss or defeat. It's that moment when you stumble right on the path you believed in most. The times you thought you'd conquered your ego only for one small event or word to shake you again. You feel weak, ashamed, and in that loneliness, you're tempted to go back, to be the pleasing version others once loved, just to be accepted again. But as Jung taught, those falls don't come to destroy you. They come to reveal the parts of you that remain unhealed, the ones still waiting to be integrated and loved. Every time you fall, the shadow reappears. It's not punishment. It's illumination. It shines light on your hidden arrogance, your fear of criticism, your hunger for approval. And the moment you rise again without applause or support, your self expands. In a letter to Freud, Jung wrote, "Mistakes are, after all, the foundations of truth. Failure doesn't weaken you. It makes you real, because only when no one catches you do you learn how to walk with your own strength." I once knew a woman who ran a small business. After years of effort, she was betrayed by her co-founder and lost nearly everything. For months, she lived in guilt and fear. But one day, her therapist asked, "If this isn't an ending, but a lesson, what is it teaching you?" She went silent, then said, "Maybe I never truly listened to my intuition." From then on, she began journaling daily, not to complain, but to write what she was learning from the pain. A year later, she reopened her company, smaller but steadier. "I'm no longer afraid to fall," she said, "because every fall makes me more honest with myself. That's how failure becomes fire. You can't grow in safety because safety lulls the unconscious to sleep. But when you hit bottom, every layer of pretense burns away and your soul stands bare. From a neuroscience perspective, when you fail, the brain activates the anterior cingulate cortex, the area that processes the gap between expectation and reality. If you respond with fear or self-blame, your body releases cortisol, the stress hormone that freezes you. But when you take action, even a small step, your prefrontal cortex activates, releasing dopamine, the chemical of progress and hope. In other words, regret paralyzes you, but action heals you. Think of the phoenix, the mythical bird that regenerates by burning itself. Whenever it grows old, it dives into flames to shed its ashes, then rises again, brighter and freer. Humans are the same. If you dare to rise from your own ashes, you'll see that what burned away wasn't you. It was just the shell that had finished its purpose. Jung once said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." When we face failure without judgment, wounds cease to be enemies and become teachers. In pain, awareness is born, and only when we touch our wounds can we truly touch our humanity. In every failure, you have two choices. Let it define you, or let it refine you. When you say, "I'm a failure," you imprison yourself in the past. But when you say, "I'm learning something," you open a door to the future. Rock bottom is never the end. It's the ground you push off from. Strong souls aren't born from comfort. They're forged in collapse. Just as metal becomes a sword only after enduring heat, humans find their true strength when they face failure and refuse to retreat. Remember, falling doesn't make you weak. Staying down does. When you shake off the ashes, face your mistake, and take one more step, even a small one, you're rewriting your story. One day you'll see that every failure had a sacred purpose. It didn't come to break you. It came to reveal the truer, brighter, steadier version of you. So don't wait for someone to lift you up. Rise quickly, firmly, with a heart still warm. That moment you don't just overcome failure, you become the flame that nothing can extinguish. Act without relying on inspiration. Will over emotion. Number 6. Act without relying on inspiration. Will over emotion. After learning to rise from your falls, a deeper lesson awaits. To act even when you don't feel ready. Because if solitude forged your strength, discipline will make you shine. Jung wrote that will is the energy capable of reorganizing the entire psyche. It's not just the force to do, but the power to transcend fleeting emotion in service of lasting meaning. When you act only from inspiration, your ego still rules, the part of you that always seeks comfort. But when you act beyond feeling, you no longer need motivation because you've submitted to a higher order, the order of the self, where action flows from purpose, not mood. Inspiration is a gift, but discipline is the foundation. There will be days when you feel no motivation, no hope, no sense of meaning. But if on those days you still sit down, still continue even one small step, you're training your greatest power. Will over emotion. Jung said that most people lose their life force waiting for inspiration instead of cultivating will. If you only act when you feel excited, your life will be full of beginnings, but empty of mastery. Because inspiration is wind, it comes and goes, but will is direction. It keeps the ship moving even when the wind dies. I'm reminded of psychologist Angela Duckworth, who developed the concept of grit, the endurance of passion and perseverance. As a child, she wasn't the smartest student, but instead of believing she wasn't enough, she chose to believe she could persist longer. Years of study led her to discover that extraordinary achievers aren't the most talented, but those who act when enthusiasm fades, especially when no one is cheering. Jung once said, "Freedom of will is the ability to do gladly that which I must do." Freedom isn't doing what you like. It's gladly doing what's necessary. When you rise above your emotions, you stop being their victim and become their guide. A friend of mine, a single mother working 2 jobs, once told me she woke up at 5 a.m. every day, cooking, working, surviving. There came a time when she was utterly drained. "I've lost all passion," she said. But one day when her son asked, "Mom, what happened to your dream?" something in her shifted. That night she decided to start again, not for inspiration, but for responsibility to herself. She began small, waking 15 minutes earlier to read, writing 3 daily goals, saving every spare dollar for her dream bakery. Some days she was exhausted, but she kept going. "I stopped waiting for motivation," she said. I just needed will because my son needs to see his mother not give up. A year later, she opened a small bakery. No one helped, no one encouraged, but she kept walking. She learned that willpower isn't a feeling. It's a decision to continue even when your heart feels heavy. This story reminds us, inspiration doesn't create will. Will creates inspiration. When you begin, you don't need to feel ready. You just need to be honest with your first step. Inspiration will follow as a reward for perseverance. Strong-willed people aren't emotionless. They simply don't let emotion control them. They still fear, doubt, and tire, but they act for something greater, for values, commitments, integrity. Each time they do what's right instead of what's easy, they strengthen the bridge between consciousness and soul, between the small ego and the mature self. One day you'll realize that your most defining progress didn't happen in moments of excitement, but in moments of resistance, especially when you were alone with no reminders or encouragement. Those are the moments that shape you, not because they're easy, but because you refuse to let mood or loneliness dictate your direction. So if today you feel uninspired, unseen, unsupported, remember, you don't need any of that to move. You just need one small decision to start. Not perfectly, not dramatically. Simply start, and then consistency will take you further than anyone who ever tried to help you, to the far shore of yourself. If you've ever had to keep going alone, without motivation, without support, guided only by will, share your story in the comments, because maybe your story will be the small flame that keeps someone else from giving up today. You don't need anyone to understand you. Everything you seek is within. Number 7. You don't need anyone to understand you. Everything you seek is within. There comes a moment after all the silent effort when you realize you've done everything right, kept walking, stayed disciplined, stayed faithful to the path. Yet the outer world remains silent. No one knows. No one understands. No one says thank you. And in that quiet, a subtle emptiness arises. Do all these efforts even matter? That's the final lesson. When no one is left to lean on, you must find your own light. When you crave understanding, you're still asking others to validate your existence. But no one can truly understand you because only you know how deep your inner journey has been. Carl Jung once wrote, "Your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. All the answers you seek are already within your unconscious. You only need enough stillness to hear them." After years of living to be understood, you realize not everyone has the capacity to see you at your depth. Sometimes they only see the parts that make them comfortable, and that's not their fault. In a world where everyone is searching for themselves, few can truly see another soul. When you stop expecting understanding from the outside, you begin the return inward, where all your contradictions start to harmonize. Fear and courage, pain and healing, darkness and light. There you no longer need anyone to confirm that you are enough. You just need to know that you are being true to your soul, and that is enough. When that happens, you stop looking for saviors because you've become your own. I once heard the story of a young painter who, after years of painting for trends and sales, fell into creative exhaustion. One day she left the city, rented a small house by the lake, and cut off all communication for a month. She painted again, not to show, not to sell, but to listen to what her soul wanted to say. When she returned, her art had changed. Raw, alive, full of soul. A gallery in Berlin saw her new work by chance and invited her to exhibit. She said, "When I stopped trying to be seen, people began to truly see me." That's the paradox Jung described. When you stop seeking outwardly, you become a center of inward gravity, because creative energy, love, and wisdom don't come from being understood. They come from accepting yourself, even the parts no one else understands. Like a lighthouse in the night sea, it doesn't shout to be seen nor move to seek attention. It simply stands shining and, by doing so, guides those who are lost. Humans are the same. When you stand in your own light without needing recognition, your presence itself becomes guidance for others. Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." When you stop asking the world, "Who am I?" and start asking yourself, "What do I truly need?" the veil of the unconscious begins to lift. The psychotherapist Carl Rogers once said, "The curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change. No one will ever fully understand you. But that doesn't mean you can't be loved. Because real love doesn't require full understanding, only full acceptance. And when you learn to accept yourself in all your complexity, depth, and contradictions, You radiate an energy that makes others feel safe near you. Strangely, the moment you stop seeking someone to understand you, you begin to be understood, not through words, but through presence. The ones who truly belong in your life will feel it without explanation. If life has ever exhausted you with the need to be understood, rest. Sit in silence, place your hand over your heart and listen. That voice inside, faint but steady, knows the way. It knows where to go, what to release, and how to begin again. And then you'll realize no one needs to complete you because you were never incomplete. Everything you've ever searched for, love, peace, understanding, are simply different faces of one thing, coming home to yourself. That's how you rise even when no one is by your side. Not through the noise of proving, but through the quiet of awakening. Conclusion. Person who can rise when no one is there isn't someone who feels no pain, but someone who turns loneliness into a teacher, silence into fuel, and every fall into a foundation of strength. They don't live to be seen, but to be honest with their soul. When the world goes silent, they listen within. When no one believes, they hold faith themselves. And from that place that once felt empty, another kind of power is born, a power that needs no proof. Because in the end, this journey isn't about becoming unbreakable. It's about becoming authentic with your fears, your will, and your own light. When you stop waiting to be saved, you'll realize you were never weak. You just hadn't yet seen how strong you really are. If this video has awakened something in your heart, share it, because maybe someone out there needs this reminder too, that they are strong enough to stand up and keep believing in themselves. And don't forget to subscribe, because this journey has just begun, the journey of becoming yourself, steady, clear, and free, even when no one stands beside you.